At 9:17 p.m., the ballroom doors opened. By 9:18, a billionaire's career was dead. That's how precise this revenge was. His wife had timed everything: the affair, the evidence, the regulator, the public humiliation. And when she took the microphone, she didn't scream. She didn't cry. She just told the truth and let silence finish the job.
Heels. They call her the ghost wife. This is the story of how Evelyn Hart buried a billionaire without making a sound. She walks into a ballroom where her husband is toasting himself, and at first, no one even recognizes her. Heels. Then the light hits the diamonds on her throat, and Victor Hale's champagne glass almost slips. Standing next to her is a man whose name alone can clear a room. Evelyn isn't there to beg. She's there to end him. Now, before we jump in, do me a solid, Heels. Tell me what city you're from in the comments. Hit that like button and stick with me, because what Evelyn does in the final act will literally take your breath away. Heels. Let's begin. The mansion on Ashbury Lane has 22 rooms, and you couldn't hear a single sound of hers in any of them. Evelyn Hart stood by a huge window, her coffee going cold. Heels. She was watching the groundskeeper rake leaves into a pile the wind would just blow away anyway. She'd been standing there for 40 minutes. So long, in fact, the housekeeper Marguerite walked past her twice without a word. Heels. Like you'd walk past a sleeping dog. It was just another Tuesday in October. The kind of day where nothing's supposed to happen, which somehow felt so much worse when it didn't. Heels. Victor left at 6:30 that morning, like clockwork. He kissed the top of her head the way you'd kiss an old photo of your mom, a hollow robotic gesture. He mentioned a dinner in the city, saying he'd be very late. Don't wait up, sweetheart, Heels. He hadn't actually meant that word in years. Now it was just a sound he made while his brain was already somewhere else. She sipped her coffee. It was bitter. The housekeeper made it strong because Victor liked it strong. Heels. No one ever bothered to ask Evelyn how she liked hers. 7 years in that house, and not a single soul ever asked. Heels. A phone on the side table hums, rattling on the marble. Evelyn doesn't even turn. She knows the sound of her own phone like a mother knows her baby's cry, and this sound was not it. It was the other one. Heels. The burner phone Victor claimed was for bad service in his study, or for taking calls by the pool. But 3 months ago, he stopped taking it to the pool. He started taking it to the garage, then the garden. And 2 weeks ago, Heels, he started taking it into the bathroom, turning on the water while he talked. The phone hums again, 3 short bursts. It's a text. Evelyn sets her coffee down. Heels. She glides across the room in her socks, the thick carpet eating every sound, and she picks up the phone. Victor never told her the password, but Victor wasn't a creative man. His mother's birthday opened the safe. Heels. His mother's birthday opened the wine cellar. And now his mother's birthday opens the phone. Just 4 numbers. The screen lights up. The latest text reads, "Tonight wear the red one. I want you in it and then I want you out of it." Heels. The text history goes back 9 months. Evelyn just stood there, completely still, and she didn't cry. Heels. She didn't gasp. She did nothing the 24-year-old version of her would have done. The girl Victor proposed to in a vineyard and swore was the only one for him. She was 31 now. She hadn't grown old, just older, and what she did was simple. Heels. She read. She read every single message. She scrolled through months of hotel reservations, room numbers, inside jokes, and a name. Scarlett, Scarlett baby. Scarlett, you just destroyed me. Scarlett Vane, 26 years old, Heels, and a junior vice president at Hale Capital Partners. Heels. Evelyn had met her once at a Christmas party 2 years ago. Scarlett was a new hire, in a navy dress that fit her like a second skin. Evelyn remembered thinking the girl had excellent posture. Heels. She remembered Victor's hand staying on the small of Scarlett's back for just a second too long. And she remembered pushing that thought away, because she refused to become that kind of paranoid wife. She'd tried so hard not to be that woman. Heels. She reads a text from August. She has no idea. She never will. Women like Evelyn don't ask questions. She's furniture. Heels. Furniture. Evelyn's thumb freezes over the screen. Her wedding ring catches a beam of sunlight, making a tiny, bright spot on the wall. She watches that little light tremble, and then she puts the phone back on the table exactly where she found it. Heels. Screen down, 3 inches from the lamp. She walks out of the room. She crosses the hall, goes up the massive staircase, past the portrait of Victor's grandfather, who always seemed to be judging her. She goes into the master bedroom. She shuts the door. Heels. She sits on their bed, and still she doesn't cry. That's what she noticed. And that told her she was already someone else. Heels. A younger Evelyn would be broken on the floor. This Evelyn sat on a bed she picked out herself, in a house she filled while her husband was gone, and she thought with a clarity so cold it hurt, I will take every single thing from him, and he will never see me coming. She didn't have a plan yet, but she knew the woman at the window was a wife. The woman down was a weapon. There was no going back. The furniture had just learned to walk. She gave herself 3 days. 3 days to show absolutely nothing. Heels. 3 days of kissing Victor hello and asking about his day, ordering groceries, smiling at emails, and laughing at the right times during his dinner stories. 3 days to just watch him, to really study him like never before. Heels. The little twitch by his mouth when he was lying. The way his hand drifted to his phone every 7 minutes when he thought she wasn't looking. The way I love you too sounded like he was reading lines from a script. On the 4th day, Heels, she called a lawyer. Not their family lawyer, not the guy who wrote their prenup while Victor's father watched them like a hawk. Heels. Evelyn was much smarter than that. She called a woman named Diane Kessler. Diane had represented the ex-wife of a tycoon Evelyn once met at a charity dinner. The woman, drunk on gin, had told her if you ever need out, call Diane. She's a surgeon. Heels. You won't even feel it until you're free. Evelyn had saved the number on a napkin, hiding it inside a book she knew Victor would never touch. She made the call from a payphone at a gas station 40 minutes away. Heels. Knowing that nothing in that house was truly private anymore. Heels. The payphone felt sticky, and the receiver smelled like cheap cologne. Evelyn gave Diane's name to a bored receptionist, and 20 seconds later a sharp, calm voice was on the line. This is Diane. My name is Evelyn Hart. I need to leave my husband, Heels, and I need him to not know I'm gone until there's nothing left for him to even fight for. There was a short pause, just long enough for Diane to process it. Can you be in my office Thursday at 11? Yes. Don't bring your phone. Don't take your car, Heels. Don't tell a soul. If asked, you had a hair appointment that ran late. I understand, Heels. Evelyn? Yes? What does he have that he believes you can never touch? Standing in that gas station parking lot, Evelyn felt the wind in her hair. And for the first time in 4 days, she smiled. It was not a happy smile. It was a small, Heels, secret smile that would have terrified anyone who saw it. Everything, she said. He thinks I can't touch a single thing. Good, Diane said. Those are the cases I like best. Diane Kessler's office was on the 38th floor, Heels, and it didn't feel like a law office. It felt like the private library of a woman who had already won, Heels. Books were on every shelf, every table, stacked in towers on the floor. No diplomas hung on the walls, just a single photo of a younger Diane on some courthouse steps looking dead serious. Diane herself was 56, Heels, with short silver hair and glasses on a chain. She wore no jewelry except a simple gold wedding band and a watch that cost more than most cars. Sit down, Diane said. Evelyn sat. Diane opened a folder. Tell me everything, she said. Heels. Let's start with your prenup. So Evelyn told her. The agreement was supposedly airtight. She'd get $2 million, a car and their cottage in the Hamptons. A gift from Victor's father, who had no idea what he had just armed her with. Heels. It all belonged to Victor. The city pad, the mansion, the art, the cars, his entire company, everything. His lawyer Diane taps her pen. $2 million, she says. That's his offer if you play nice and sign. Right. So what's he hiding off the books? Evelyn takes a breath. She tells Dermot where Victor got drunk and bragged about a deal with some Gulf shipping firm. A deal where the invoices were fake and the profits were even faker, disappearing into thin air. Deals. And that difference was stashed in a bank account in some country Victor was careful to never name. She tells Diane about a hot July night when 2 strangers showed up, Heels, and she heard Victor on the phone saying, regulators can't touch it if they bury it in the Caldera deal, followed by a laugh that twisted her gut. She tells Diane about the safe in the library he thought she was too stupid to open, Heels, and she told her about the ledger she found inside, how she put it back, not understanding its poison until it was way too late. All this time, Diane just listens, not writing a single word. Heels. When Evelyn finally stops, Diane takes off her glasses. Evelyn, she says, do you have any idea what you're telling me? I do. You're saying your husband is a stone-cold criminal. No, Evelyn says. Heels. I'm saying I'm married to a man who thinks I'm a piece of furniture, and furniture doesn't read his secret books. But surprise, I do. A small smile hits Diane's lips, a first. Okay, she says, here's the plan. And for the next 4 months, Heels, The plan was a silence so deep that Victor Hale lived right in the middle of it and never suspected a thing. Evelyn started with a new bank account in a tiny town Victor had never even heard of, Heels. She used her maiden name, a name she hadn't used in 7 years, a name Victor once mocked, Evelyn Marsh. She'd actually laughed when he said it sounded cheap. She is not laughing anymore. In fact, she likes how it sounds, Heels. Evelyn Marsh was a woman who controlled her own damn money. She photographed that ledger, page by page, over 11 nights while Victor was gone. She scanned every single paper in his office. Nothing was ever moved, nothing taken. Heels. Victor was the kind of guy who'd notice if a pen was moved 2 inches. Heels. But he never noticed his wife had his entire desk memorized, down to the exact angle of his pens. She stopped wearing her perfume. For 7 years, she wore the same jasmine scent he bought her on their honeymoon. Now she wore nothing. Just her, Heels. It was a tiny rebellion, a little act of vanishing, just to see how long it would take him to notice. Spoiler alert, he never did. Then, on her lawyer's advice, she started filming him. Not with a phone, with a tiny spy camera Diane gave her. Heels, the size of a lipstick, recording everything in short loops. Heels. She filmed his shady business calls at the dinner table. She filmed him in his study when he thought she was sound asleep. She filmed the men who came over at odd hours, leaving with briefcases suddenly a lot heavier. Sleep wasn't easy, she expected that, Heels. What she didn't expect was the ice-cold calm she felt instead. Some nights she'd lie next to Victor, listen to him breathe, and think, this is the last winter you will ever sleep in this bed, completely clueless that you're being watched, Heels. The first time she heard the name Adrian Volkov, it was a cold Thursday in January, Heels. Snow was on the ground. She'd just left a 3-hour meeting with Diane, going over the divorce papers that wouldn't be filed for another 6 weeks. Timing is everything. A driver Diane hired, a quiet guy named Miguel, was taking her home. He never spoke, Heels, never looked at her in the mirror. Then Diane called, Evelyn? Yes, we have a problem. That shipping company from the ledger. What about it? It's not Victor's. What do you mean it's not his? Heels. I mean your husband has stolen from a business owned by someone else, and this someone else does not use lawyers to settle his debts. Heels. Evelyn just stared out the window at the snow. Who is it? His name is Adrian Volkov. The name felt like a distant memory, something she'd heard but couldn't quite grab, like a sound from a forgotten dream. Maybe from some party, Heels, or a news headline she'd ignored. Tell me about him, Diane hesitates. He's 41. Born in a country that no longer exists. Came here at 22, started as a driver for a mobster named Kasparian. By the time he was 28, Heels. Kasparian was history, and Volkov had his entire operation, including his top 3 guys. Heels. On paper, he owns a shipping line, a construction company, and a few restaurants. Off paper, he owns a lot more. He's never been arrested, never even charged. 3 different guys who investigated him lost their jobs. 1 lost his house. Heels. He doesn't do interviews. He doesn't go to parties. He's a ghost. If you Google his name, you get 8 results, and 6 of them are for the wrong dude. What does he look like? Evelyn, Diane, tell me what he looks like. Another pause. He looks, Heels. Diane said carefully, like a man who has never ever been told no in his entire life. Heels. Evelyn watched the snow. Does he know about what Victor's been doing? He's starting to, and how do you know that? Because, Diane said, Adrian Volkov and I had dinner last night. The line went dead quiet, so quiet that for the first time ever, Heels. Miguel, the driver, glanced at her in the rearview mirror, then snapped his eyes away. Diane, yes, I want to meet him, Flynn. That is not why I'm calling you. I know, she said. I want to meet him anyway. But Diane didn't say yes that night, Heels, or for 2 whole weeks. And in those 2 weeks, Evelyn didn't mention it again. 7 years with Victor taught her one thing. To make someone come to you, you just have to stand perfectly still. Heels. On day 15, the call came. Saturday, 7:30. Address is on its way. Be on time. Bring nothing and wear nothing he could pawn. And don't you dare bring up Victor unless he does first. How will I know when? Oh, you'll know. Heels. Evelyn showed up Saturday to a place that was definitely not a restaurant. It was a private room above one, up a sketchy back staircase. And inside there was 1 table, 1 man, Heels, and 2 other guys by the window who somehow managed to watch her and completely ignore her at the exact same time. It was a neat trick, Heels. The man at the table stood up when she walked in. He was tall, taller than Victor, which was the first thing she noticed because Victor was 6'1" and acted like it was an achievement. Adrian Volkov was different. He wore a black suit, no tie, heels, and a white shirt unbuttoned at the collar. His face looked like it belonged to another century. He could have been from a 1920s photograph, or even earlier. He had dark eyes, and a mouth that looked like it had forgotten how to smile. Mrs. Hart? Eels. Mrs. Marsh, she corrected him. I'm using my maiden name again. He just looked at her, sizing her up. Eels. Then he gave a short, single nod, like she'd just passed some secret test. Please sit.
She sat. He sat.
A waiter appeared with a bottle of wine that had no label, poured 2 glasses, and disappeared without a sound. Adrian's hands were rock steady. Eels. His nails were clean. A tiny white scar ran down his right thumb, a scar she'd ask about way later, and he'd tell her a story she knew was a lie, and he would just smile, letting her believe whatever she wanted. Diane tells me, he started, Eels, that your husband has been stealing from me for about 3 years. I believe, she said. That is what his ledger says. Eels. You found this ledger? Yes. How? He thinks I don't know how to open the safe. Adrian just watched her for a long moment. And do you? I opened it last August, Evelyn said, and 41 times since then. Something in Adrian's eyes changed. Eels. It wasn't a smile. It was recognition. The look someone gets when they realize they're dealing with a completely different kind of player. 41 times, I kept count. Why? Evelyn told him, Eels. Because the day I stop counting is the day I start lying to myself about what I'm really doing. Adrian put the bottle down. Mrs. Marsh, he said, why did you want this meeting? Evelyn had an answer all prepared. She'd practiced it for weeks. Eels. She wrote down speeches and burned them in her sink. She opened her mouth to give her perfect rehearsed answer, and instead, she did something totally unplanned. She told him the absolute truth. Eels. Because my husband threw away 7 years of my life for a 26-year-old who calls him baby in her texts. I can ruin him in court for $2 million and a house, but that's not enough. I want to ruin him in a way he feels in his bones. Eels. I want him to be the ghost story men tell about guys who treat their wives like decorations. I can start it. I can't finish it. But you can. I'm here to ask you what that would cost me. Adrian Volkov just stared at her. Eels. He stared for so long that one of his men shifted his weight, and Adrian, without even looking, just lifted a single finger, and the man froze solid. Eels. Mrs. March, Adrian says, his voice low. You've got this all wrong. But Evelyn feels nothing. Later, she'd realize her heart had already quit for the night. All her fear was spent. She asks, how? You thought I wanted a payout. I thought I wanted to hire you. Eels. He says, hire me? Then drops the bomb. Your husband is stealing from me. I've known for a bit. And as Diane told you, I was handling it. But what I didn't have until she gave me your name, Eels, was someone inside his house with a key to his safe and a camera in her purse. Eels. I didn't have someone who'd been memorizing the angles of his security pins. He leans in, voice still dead calm. You're not here to ask for a favor, Ms. March. You're here so we can find out if we want the same thing. And if we do, I'm not taking your money, Eels. I'm offering you a share. Evelyn sits there, a perfect statue. A share of what? He replies, a share of what's left of him when we're finished. She doesn't answer right away. She just lifts her wine glass and takes a sip. It's unbelievable wine. Eels. She knows nothing about it, but she knows this isn't wine you buy. This is wine you're given. Eels. Mr. Volkov. Heat off. Adrian. She continues, Adrian, I have one condition, he says, nay, she lays it out. When it's over, he can't know it was me. Not at first. Not in the middle. He can only know at the very, very end. Eels. I want him to spend every day thinking I ran away. I want him to tell his girlfriend I was weak. I want him to laugh about me at parties. Eels. And then I want to walk into a room where he's standing, and I want him to understand in 1 single second that every good thing he lost was my hand on the knife. Adrian just watches her. Miss March, she corrects him, Evelyn. He says, Evelyn, Eels, that's not a condition. That's the plan. She almost smiles. Almost. But she's not smiling for anyone anymore. Then we have an understanding. He confirms. We have an understanding. Eels. She skips going home that night. Instead, she heads to a hotel Diane booked in her name, Evelyn March. She sits by the window in a dress that costs more than the room, drinking tea a waiter brought her without asking. Eels. She watches snow fall on a city she's about to own in a way she can't even describe yet. At 2 a.m, her phone buzzes. It's Victor. Where are you? Another message follows. Marguerite says you didn't come home. Evelyn reads it. Eels. Then turns the phone face down. She doesn't answer that night, or the next morning. In fact, she doesn't answer for 6 whole days, and when she finally does, she types just 3 words. Eels. I needed air, he replies in less than 90 seconds. Sweetheart, you scared me. Please come home. I'll be better. I promise. Evelyn reads his message twice, then deletes it. She puts her phone down, grabs the hotel phone, and calls Diane. He's scared. Feels. Good, Diane replies. That's exactly where we want him. Yes, I'm going back tomorrow. I'm going to pretend I had a breakdown. I'm going to cry. I'm going to let him hold me. I want him to think he's getting me back. Why? Diane asks. Feels. Because, Evelyn says, I have 47 more documents to photograph, and he'll be so careful with me as long as he thinks I'm fragile. I am going to use every single minute of it. Feels. There's a long silence on the other end. When Diane finally speaks, her voice is softer, almost proud. Evelyn March, she says. Where in God's... But she cuts herself off. She starts again. Where have you been hiding? Feels. Evelyn just stares at her own reflection in the dark hotel window. A woman in a dress, a woman who stopped being a piece of furniture months ago and only just now bothered to notice. In that house, she says quietly. I've been hiding in that house. Feels. She goes home that Monday. She cries in the foyer just like she practiced, which isn't hard because some of the tears are real, just not for the reasons Victor thinks. Feels. He holds her tight. He smells like another woman's shampoo while telling her he loves her. He means it, but only in that specific way guys like him do. He means it now, but he'll mean something else tomorrow and never know the difference. Feels. She lets him hold her. Her face is buried in his shoulder, but her eyes are locked on the door to his study, where the safe sits behind a painting of a horse his granddad bought in 1958. Feels. She wonders how many more times she'll be opening it in the next few weeks. I'm sorry, she whispers into his shirt. Feels. I don't know what happened to me. I was just so tired. Shh, Victor says, stroking her hair. Shh, you don't have to explain. You've been under so much pressure. Let me take care of you. Let me handle everything. Okay, Evelyn whispers back. Okay, Victor. Feels. You can take care of everything. He totally misses her real meaning. He's not even listening for it. He kisses her head, says he loves her again, then walks into his study and shuts the door. Evelyn stands in the foyer, hand flat against the wall. Feels. Waiting for her breathing to go back to normal. Then she goes upstairs. She draws a bath. She gets in. Feels. She sits in the water for what feels like forever. She doesn't cry. She already put on that show in the foyer, where it counted. The stage is empty. She's just a woman in warm water, thinking. She thinks of Adrian Volkov's hands on the wine bottle. Feels. How steady they were. She thinks of the little scar on his thumb. She thinks about how he said her name, Evelyn, like it was something he decided to keep. She doesn't know what this feeling is. It's not love. Feels. She remembers what that felt like at 23. This is something else, something slower, something that hasn't decided what it's going to be yet. Feels. She gets out of the bath and dries off, putting on a robe. She walks to the window and looks out at the snowy lawn. A crow is pecking at something near the hedges. Downstairs, in his study, Victor is laughing at something on the phone. Evelyn just listens. Feels. She doesn't know the exact future, just the outline of it. A ballroom months from now. A set of doors swinging open. A man at her side. Her husband looking up from his champagne and seeing her, really seeing her, for the first time in 7 years. Feels. In that 1 second before he realizes he has already lost everything. Feels. She doesn't smile, not even now, standing alone by the window. She's saving it. The crow flies off, a black shape against a gray sky, and Evelyn turns away. Downstairs, Victor is still laughing. She gets dressed slowly. A soft gray sweater. Feels. A pair of jeans she hasn't worn in years because Victor once said they made her look like a mom. She pulls her hair back, puts on zero makeup. She needs to look like a woman who shattered and is now trying to put herself back together. Feels. That's the story Victor needs to believe. And she's going to make it very, very easy for him. She heads downstairs. Feels. Victor hangs up the phone. He's in the kitchen, at the island, pouring a scotch at 4 in the afternoon. That's new. He always used to wait until 6, calling anyone who drank earlier a savage. But here he is, 2 fingers of booze at 4 on a Monday. Feels. He drinks half of it before he even sees his wife in the doorway. Hey, he says, putting the glass down and wiping his mouth with his hand. Another new habit. You're up. Feeling better? A little. Come here, she does. He pulls her close, holding her. Feels. And she lets her arms hang limp for a second, before remembering to put them around him. Feels. He doesn't notice she hesitated. I was thinking, he mumbles into her hair, we should get away for a weekend. That mountain place you liked, just us. Okay. Yeah? Okay, Victor. He pulls back to look at her. For a split second, Feels. She thinks he'll see it. That the face looking up at him isn't the one he married. That something behind her eyes has shifted. But he doesn't. He sees what he wants to see. A tired wife, ready to forgive him for something she doesn't even know he did, feels. He gives her that smile that's closed billion-dollar deals. Then he kisses her forehead. I'll have Marguerite pack. We'll leave Friday. I love you. Feels. You know that. She just says, I know. He never notices she doesn't say it back. He just grabs his drink and walks out of the kitchen. Evelyn stands there watching him go, thinking, you are so easy. You were always going to be this easy. Feels. I just never bothered to look before. Marguerite comes in from the pantry holding a bag of onions. She stops dead when she sees Evelyn. Marguerite is 61. She's been in this house longer than Evelyn has. And sometimes, feels, there's a look in her eyes Evelyn can't quite figure out. Mrs. Hart, are you all right? I'm fine, Marguerite. You weren't home. No. Marguerite just places the onions on the counter. Feels. She didn't reach for a knife. She just stared at Evelyn, her face shifting between soft and solid. My sister, she began, left her husband in 1987, planned it for 4 years, and nobody knew a thing. She said leaving was easy. Feels. The hard part was the 4 years of kissing him goodnight, pretending she wasn't plotting his downfall. Evelyn was frozen. Marguerite. This isn't a question, Mrs. Hart. I'm telling you a story. Why? Feels. And that's when Marguerite finally grabbed a knife, slicing an onion like she'd done it 10,000 times right there. Feels. Because my sister is 74 now, living her best life in Lisbon with a tomato garden. The man she left died alone in a hospital. She didn't even go to his funeral now. I've worked in this house for 11 years, Mrs. Hart. I've got ears. Feels. So I'm just telling you, if you're planning something, I haven't a thing and I will not see a thing. And I'll keep on not seeing it for as long as you need. Evelyn stood there, stunned. Marguerite. Yes. Thank you. Coffee? Yes. Feels. How do you take it? Evelyn almost laughed out loud. Feels. She choked it back down. With milk? A little sugar? Figured, Marguerite said, focused on the onion. I'll bring it to the library. The mountain getaway was just 4 days away. That meant Evelyn had 4 nights to raid the safe. Feels. And 4 days to make calls on a burner phone from Diane that Victor would never see. She moved like a surgeon. On Tuesday, she snapped photos of a loan agreement between Hale Capital and a shell company, Feels. Diane had already traced it through a maze of fake addresses, right back to a law school buddy of Victor's. A guy who supposedly died in a boating accident 2 years ago. Feels. Yeah, a dead man was somehow still signing legal documents. On Wednesday, she hit the jackpot. Printed emails Victor was dumb enough to leave in his desk. Men always get sloppy. They'll lock down their digital life but leave a paper trail a mile wide. Feels. The emails were from Scarlett Vane, his mistress, and it wasn't just sexting. Some were way worse. They were about money. Turns out Scarlett wasn't just a side piece. She'd been promoted at Hale Capital. She was signing off on shady transfers. Feels. Scarlett knew everything. She was part of the whole criminal operation. Feels. Evelyn photographed every single email. She put them back exactly where she found them, closed the drawer, and went to bed. Lying next to her husband, a cold, clean thought hit her. Scarlett isn't some innocent girl he's using. She's a co-conspirator. Feels. And I can use that. On Thursday, she took her own car into the city. Diane's orders. Act normal. Build a pattern. She hit the salon. Went to Bergdorf's. Bought earrings she didn't want, and a dress she'd never wear. Feels. All so the credit card statements would tell the right story. Feels. In the afternoon, she went to Chelsea Art Gallery she'd barely been to before. She was staring at a painting of a man's back when she heard footsteps stop right behind her. Miss Marsh. She didn't turn around at first. Then she did. It was Adrian Volkov, in a dark coat, his hair wet from the snow. This was no coincidence. This guy did nothing by accident. Mr. Volkov. Adrian. Adrian. This is your gallery. Yes. Feels. Diane told me. Good. He kept his distance, a man giving her space to choose. How is he? Adrian asked. He's planning a trip to the mountains. With you? With me. Adrian looked at the painting. Do you like it? Honestly, I don't know the first thing about paintings. Neither do I, Adrian admitted. I bought this, Alifer, from who owed me. I kept it because it's quiet. I just walk around at night. Never bought a painting I actually liked. Feels. I've bought 3 paintings I was supposed to like. One's in my apartment. Still don't like it. Evelyn watched him. Why are you telling me this? Because, Adrian said, you're about to lie to your husband's face for the next 6 weeks. I know nothing about art, and you nothing about art. Now we're just 2 people who know nothing about art, standing in a room full of it. That is all. She paused. The trip. Yes, he's going to try and fix things. Feels. He's going to be on his best behavior. He'll tell me he loves me over and over. Does it bother you? The question slipped out before she could stop it. Adrian kept his eyes locked on the painting. Evelyn. Yes, feels. We are not at a point where my feelings about your marriage are your business. We might never be. That's up to you. I'm not a man who pushes. You didn't answer the question. No, he said, I didn't. She almost smiled. Almost. Feels. They stood there for another minute before Adrian stepped back. Feels. When you get back from the mountains, come to the restaurant. Same time, same table. We need to talk. All right. And Evelyn. Yes, if this becomes too much, you can stop. The money for prenup. I will personally match it. You can leave. Vanish. Feels. I will never look for you. Your husband will never know we spoke. That's not a threat. It's an offer. I want you to hold on to that for the next 6 weeks and know it's real. Evelyn just stared at him. Why are you telling me that? Because, Adrian said, feels. I've known too many people who couldn't tell the difference between wanting something and being able to afford it. I don't want you to be one of them. Feels. You're paying with your own skin. I want you to remember that you can choose to walk away. I won't walk away. I know. But I wanted you to know that I said it. He gave a slight nod and then was gone. She watched him leave, then stood in front of that painting for 10 more minutes and is not seeing it at all. The mountain belonged to Victor, inherited just like his expensive watch and his belief that the world owed him everything. It was on 12 acres of total isolation, miles from the nearest town. Feels. The housekeeper was conveniently given the week off. Victor drove them up on Friday, and for 2 hours straight, he played the part of the man she married. He told her stories, asked about her book, even kissed her hand at a red light. It almost broke her, because your body doesn't care what your mind knows. Her body remembered being loved by him, and it was a slow learner. But the mind always catches up. Always. Feels. They got to the lodge at dusk. Victor built a fire, poured the wine, and sat next to her on the couch. Then he started his carefully rehearsed speech. I know I haven't been present. This deal has been eating me alive. I haven't been a good husband. I see that now. I'm going to be better, okay? Yes. Look at me. She looked. It was the same handsome face she fell for at 24. Men like Victor don't get ugly. Feels. They just get handsome in a sharper, more dangerous way, a way that shows the weight of all their crimes. He was 43 now, with lines around his eyes that looked like concern, but were just from squinting at spreadsheets. He was beautiful. Feels. That's how he got away with all of it. I love you, he said. I know. Do you love me? The fire crackled. Sparks flew up the chimney. Yes, Evelyn said. And technically it wasn't a lie. She had loved him. The past tense was doing all the work. Feels, and he was dumb enough to buy it. Victor let out a breath. Feels. She felt him relax, and he pulled her into a hug, holding her for way too long. She could hear his heart beating, all steady and smug. Feels. And she just thought about how that same heart was going to keep on beating for 6 more weeks, while his entire world was secretly being demolished, piece by piece. Her next thought was absolutely savage. She thought, I hope it hurts. Not a quick punch, feels, but that slow-burning humiliation. The kind you feel when you wake up in a house that's not yours, in a town where nobody answers your calls, and you realize you're about to lose the bed you're sitting on. Feels. The moment you know your name has become a dirty secret. Feels. She just let him hold her, playing the part. Closed her eyes. I love you too, she said, making sure he believed it, and the fool did. They got back from the mountains that Monday. Victor, in his own dumb way, was happy. He'd decided their marriage was fine. Feels. Which is how he'd handled every problem for 25 years. Just decide it's fine until it explodes. Evelyn hit Diane's office on Tuesday. Diane was all business, paper stacked, glasses on, didn't even look up. Scarlet vein, she said. Evelyn's like, feels. Yeah? She has a sister. Evelyn had no idea. Turns out the sister is a paralegal in Boston who hates Scarlett's guts because Scarlett slept with her fiancé back in 2019. The wedding was called off, and they haven't spoken since, feels, aside from one 8-minute call 2 years ago. Feels. The call ended with the sister hanging up on her. Evelyn sat down, stunned. How do you know all this? Diane's response was legendary. Adrian has a woman who finds things out, and she's very good. She started work on Sunday. Evelyn just absorbed this. Feels. What's the sister's name? Delia Vane, 30 years old. By all accounts, she's a decent person who's been stuck as the boring sister her whole life while everyone stared at Scarlett. And she's quietly furious about it. She won't help for cash. Feels. But she will help for a front row seat to watch her sister's world burn down. So what's the plan? You want me to talk to her? Nope, Diane said. I want you to write her a letter. Feels. Evelyn was like, a letter? You mean handwritten? Yes, on this exact paper. You're going to introduce yourself as Evelyn Marsh. You're going to tell her you're the wife whose husband has been cheating with her sister for 9 months. Heels. You will say zero about the business, the money, or Adrian. You're going to ask her, as one woman publicly humiliated by Scarlet Vane to another, if she'd be willing to meet for coffee. Why coffee? Because coffee is the perfect test. A good person says yes, Heels. A shady person says no. If she agrees to coffee, it means she's ready to watch her sister lose. Heels. If she says no, it means she'll protect her sister even if she hates her, and then we know to back off. And if she agrees? Diane took off her glasses, getting serious. Then you're going to meet her. You won't lie to her. Heels. And you will find out what she knows about Scarlet's life, that her sister has no clue she knows. Sisters know things, especially sisters who aren't talking. Evelyn slowly nodded. Okay. One more thing, Diane added, and this is critical. Yes? Heels. If at any point Delia gets nervous, if she starts making excuses for Scarlet, you stop. You thank her for coming. You pay the bill. Heels. You walk away. No pushing, no arguing. We are not in the business of making people do things they don't want to do. Is that clear, Crystal? Write the letter tonight. Use your maiden name and this return address. Delia Vane will get it Thursday. Evelyn stood, Heels, but stopped at the door. Diane? Diane looked at her over her glasses with pure ice. Evelyn, I am a divorce lawyer. I am not a matchmaker. Write the letter. Evelyn almost laughed. She left. Done. That night, Heels, she wrote the letter in a study Victor had made for her as a project, a room he had never once stepped foot in. Heels. She wrote it by hand with blue ink on that heavy cream paper Diane gave her. When she finished, she read it over 3 times. The letter was a masterpiece. It wasn't whiny. It didn't ask for pity or call Scarlet a single name. It just said, I am the wife, Heels. My name is Evelyn. I know you have no reason to trust me. I'm writing because I think we're the only 2 people on Earth who have been screwed over by the same woman. And I would like, if you're open to it, to buy you a cup of coffee. You aren't my enemy, Heels. You are maybe a cousin to my problem. Please think about it, Heels. She signed it Evelyn Marsh. She sealed the envelope and walked down to the kitchen, where Marguerite, the housekeeper, was cleaning. She asked quietly, Marguerite, on your way out, could you drop this in a mailbox? Just not the one at the end of our driveway, Heels. Marguerite didn't even glance at the letter. Of course, Mrs. Hart. Thank you. Is it a hard letter to send? It's an honest one. Marguerite just nodded. Those are the hardest ones, she said, and went back to her pot. 6 days later, Delia Vane wrote back, Heels. The reply went to a P.O. box Diane had set up in a town Evelyn had never been to. Diane did the pickup and brought it to Evelyn's car in a supermarket parking lot. Heels. Diane just passed it through the window without saying a word. Evelyn tore it open right there. The letter was short. Evelyn, I'll have coffee with you. I won't tell my sister. There's a place called the Blue Kettle on Hanover Street in Boston. Heels. I'm there Tuesdays at 3 for my lunch break. Come any Tuesday. You'll know it's me because I look like Scarlet, if Scarlet had ever eaten a hamburger in her life. Delia. Evelyn actually laughed, a real laugh, the first one in weeks. Heels. It was so weird she looked around to see if anyone heard her. She drove home. She made dinner. Heels. When Victor got home, she kissed him, asked about his day. He complained about some maritime deal being behind schedule, and she just listened, nodding, asking all the right wifely questions. The whole time, one single thought was on repeat in her head, Heels. On Tuesday, I am driving to Boston. The meeting was set. She met Delia Vane at 3 o'clock that Tuesday at the Blue Kettle. It was a cozy little coffee shop with brick walls and mismatched furniture. Delia was already at a table in the back, Heels. She really did look like Scarlet, but she also looked like a woman who enjoyed food, and that one difference made her face seem so much kinder. Heels. Evelyn sat down. No one offered a handshake. You drove up? Yes. A long way to meet a stranger. I know. Delia just stared at her for a second. You're prettier than I thought, she said. Scarlet always said you were a nothing. Good skin, she said. Heels. But no personality. That's what she told my husband. I've read the text. Delia actually flinched. Oh, wow, okay. This is already way worse than I expected. I'm sorry. Don't be sorry, for God's sake. You didn't write them. A waiter came. Heels. Delia ordered a black coffee. Evelyn got a tea she never touched. He left and some weird music filled the silence between them. Heels. Why did you write to me, Delia? Because I don't want to hurt you, and I'm pretty sure I'm about to. Delia's face got complicated. Go on. Your sister isn't just sleeping with my husband. She's working for him. Heels. She's in a position now where she's authorizing financial transfers. And some of those transfers are totally illegal. I'm not going to bore you with the details. Just know that in the next 6 weeks, my husband's company is going down, heels, and your sister is going to be in a world of trouble. I needed you to hear it from me first. You don't deserve to find this out on the news, heels. Delia was completely still. Is she going to prison? I don't know. Possibly, but probably not. If she plays it smart, she'll have to answer some tough questions. She'll definitely lose her job and will never work in finance again. But from what I know, heels, she isn't the main character in this story. My husband is. Your sister, though, is not getting out of this clean. Delia just stared at the table. Are you the one doing this to them? I'm part of it. Then why are you telling me? Evelyn took a deep breath, heels. Because when I wrote to you, I imagined you in 6 weeks turning on the TV and seeing your sister's face, with absolutely no one you could call, heels. I also have a mother who won't speak to me. I know exactly what it's like to watch your family burn down from far away. I'm not asking you to warn her. I'm not asking you to do anything at all. I am only telling you so that when it all hits the fan, heels, you will have had a week's warning instead of 1 second. Delia was silent for a very long time. The waiter brought their drinks. Delia held her coffee mug like she was freezing, but the room was warm. She called me once, Delia said. Back in October, heels. I didn't answer. She left a message saying she was seeing a married guy, but it was complicated and he was going to leave his wife. She just wanted someone to tell, heels. She tried to tell me. I deleted it. I never even called her back. And you know what? That message messes with my head. It's the thing that keeps me up most nights. You don't owe her anything. I know I don't. That's not the issue, heels. The issue is I never wanted to be that sister, the one who deletes the message. I wanted to be the sister who picks up the phone, and I failed. Evelyn was silent. I'm sorry, she said. Don't be. Well, I am. Delia quickly wiped at her eyes like she was mad at them, heels. She grabbed her coffee and downed half of it. What do you want from me? Nothing. That's a lie. Okay, it's mostly a lie. But I'll tell you what's not, heels. In the next few weeks, there's a good chance your sister is going to do something stupid. If she freaks out, if she thinks my husband's about to sacrifice her, she might call someone or try to skip the country. She'll panic. If she calls you, heels. I don't need to know the details. I just need you to tell me that she called. One text, she called me, and that's it. That's all? That's all. So what's in it for me? Evelyn just stared at her. You get coffee with a woman who actually understands, heels. You get a letter from me later, saying how sorry I am for what's about to happen. And you get to live the rest of your life knowing you weren't the sister who ignored the call for help twice, heels. Delia just laughed. It was a short, bitter sound. You're good, she said. You're really, really good. I didn't used to be. I believe that, Delia said. You have the face of a woman who just recently figured out who she really is. Evelyn didn't answer, heels. She just sipped her tea. It burned her tongue, but she drank it. I'll do it, Delia finally said. The one text. If she calls, I won't mention you. I won't give her a heads up. She never warned me, and I'm no saint. Thank you. Don't thank me, heels. I wanted to do this before you even showed up. They sat there for another 20 minutes. They didn't say Scarlett's name again. Delia just complained about her job, some guy she was seeing, and a dog she might get, heels. Evelyn just let her talk. When it was her turn, Evelyn lied about a garden she was going to plant and told the truth about a book she was reading. They paid their own checks. They walked to the door, but Delia stopped her. Evelyn, yes. When this all goes down, heels. Whatever it is, I hope you can sleep that night. Evelyn thought about it. I don't think I will, she said. Good, said Delia. That means there's still a person in there. And then she left. Evelyn stood in the doorway of the cafe, watching her walk away, heels, a thin woman in a gray coat with her hands in her pockets. Then Evelyn turned and walked to her car, heels. Driving home in the dark, on the long highway back to a life she was about to end, Evelyn let herself cry for 20 minutes straight. She cried for Delia, heels, going home to her expensive apartment to drink wine and think about a message she deleted 4 months ago. She cried for that other man's sister in Lisbon, who had to kiss a monster every single night for 4 years and pretend she meant it, heels. She cried for herself at 24, in a white wedding dress, thinking she was marrying a good man. Because at 24, she hadn't learned that monsters like Victor always look exactly like good men. That was their favorite trick, heels. She didn't cry for herself, not for the woman she was now. That woman had work to do. Once the tears stopped, she pulled into a rest area and splashed water on her face in a grimy gas station bathroom, heels. She looked at herself in the mirror under a buzzing fluorescent bulb. Her eyes were red. Her mouth was a hard, straight line. She didn't look like a woman who just had a hard conversation. She looked like a woman who just had a necessary one. Eels. She got back in her car. She drove the rest of the way in complete silence. No music, no news. When she pulled in the driveway, the study light was on. Victor was awake, waiting probably. Worried probably. Eels, but in his own selfish way, like a banker worries about a bad investment. She killed the engine. Eels. For a minute, she sat in the silent car, staring at that lit window, at her husband's shadow moving inside. And she thought, clear as day, you have 5 weeks left of this life, and you will not see a single second of it coming. She got out of the car. Eels. She walked into the house. She put her keys on the hook. Victor called her name from his office, and she called right back, her voice sickly sweet. I'm home. She went upstairs to wash her face again, to get the smell of that Boston coffee shop off her skin. Eels. To erase a conversation he could never find out about. She stood in the bathroom, towel to her face, listening to his footsteps come up the stairs. Eels. She heard him pause right outside the bathroom door. She waited for the knock that never came. She heard him change his mind and walk on to their bedroom. That was a small thing, but it was new. He never used to hesitate. She hung up the towel. Eels. She turned off the light. She went to the bedroom and found him already in bed, glued to his phone. The blue light from the screen lit up his chin, making him look like a hollow mask. He put his phone down when she walked in. He gave her that fake smile. Eels. How was Marcy? She'd told him she was visiting an old roommate named Marcy, who lived in some town Victor had never heard of, because he never listened closely enough to know Marcy didn't exist. Eels. She's good, you know, she's just Marcy. Still with that sculptor? Still with him. God help her. She got into bed. He reached for her without looking, the way you grab for the remote control. Eels. And she let him hold her for 30 seconds before she rolled over, saying she was tired. He accepted it. He went right back to his phone. She lay with her back to him, listening to him typing. She knew that sound. Eels. 3 weeks ago, she'd memorized the rhythm of his thumbs, the specific pattern for Scarlet, which was shorter than messages to his assistant and faster than messages to his lawyer. Eels. She'd taught herself to hear the difference. She could name it in the pitch dark the way a mother knows her own child's cry, and tonight it was the Scarlet rhythm. Evelyn closed her eyes. She thought about Delia in her gray coat. Eels. She thought about a deleted text from 4 months ago. She fell asleep surprisingly fast. It wasn't good sleep, but it was sleep, and she was grateful for any she could get. The next morning, she drove to the city to meet Diane, but Diane had a visitor. Eels. A man named Adrian was in a corner chair reading a real newspaper. Eels. An actual paper newspaper, the kind you never see anymore. He didn't look up when she entered. He finished his paragraph first. Then he calmly folded it, set it down, and stood. Ms. Marsh. Evelyn. Evelyn. He didn't shake her hand. Eels. Just nodded to the chair across from Diane. Diane was watching them, and you couldn't tell if she was amused or just had heartburn. Sit, Diane said. We have decisions to make. Evelyn sat. 3 things, Diane began. First, the trip to Boston paid off. Eels. Delia Vane is now a weapon we can use without breaking her. Eels. That's better than I expected. Good work. Thank you, Ken. Adrian's team has been moving pieces on the board, and I'll let him explain it. I've been told very clearly that the day my firm asks what his people do is the day I no longer have a firm. Eels. Adrian's face didn't change, but one eyebrow twitched up. Diane exaggerates, he said. I haven't been stern with Diane since 2017. You're stern with me monthly, Diane grumbled. You're just so polite I forget. It's a skill. Adrian turned to Evelyn. Eels. Evelyn. For 6 weeks, my people have been moving money around to make it look like your husband did it. Eels. Specifically, money he had no business moving. We didn't open any accounts. We didn't forge any signatures. We simply rerouted cash that was already flowing through channels your husband thought were secret. When the right people see this paper trail, Eels, your husband will look like he stole and hid $41 million. Evelyn didn't even blink. 41 million? 41. Whose money? Adrian looked at her. Some is mine, he said. Some used to be mine before he took it. Eels. And the rest belongs to other people who agreed to help us in exchange for a few favors down the road. Eels. You don't need to know the names. You just need to know that when regulators see this file, the case will be closed. He is not talking his way out of this. Regulators? Yes, that's the third thing. Adrian leaned forward. There's a woman at the commission, Eels. Priscilla Okafor. She's been watching your husband's company for 2.5 years. He has no idea. She's never had enough to bring him down. But now, she will. In about 3 weeks, she'll get a package, an anonymous tip from a so-called angry employee. Feels. She'll know it's something much bigger. Feels. And his girlfriend won't even care, because the evidence is clean and she's been dying to get her claws into a guy like Victor for years. She's not on our team. Her goals just happen to line up with ours right now. And Scarlett? Feels. Scarlett's name is on the evidence. Evelyn took that in. How bad will it be for her? Bad enough to need a lawyer. Not bad enough for jail time, unless she does something incredibly stupid, which is always a possibility. More likely she gets questioned, feels, cracks under pressure, and throws your husband under the bus to save herself. Then she'll spend the next 6 years trying to explain why she can't work in finance anymore. Evelyn just stared at him. He stared right back, feels. Diane watched them both, let out a sigh, and grabbed her pen. Evelyn, she said, this is the part where I, as your lawyer, have to spell out exactly what you're getting into and ask if you're sure. I know what I'm getting into. Say it anyway, feels. For the record, Evelyn took a deep breath. My husband will be publicly destroyed. His company will be ripped to shreds. His girlfriend's career will be absolutely torched. I get the settlement from our prenup and off the books, feels. I get a cut of whatever Adrian recovers, sent through channels I will never ask about, feels. My husband won't have a clue I was involved until the final night. That's the deal. And you get, Diane pressed, that there is no scenario where he comes out of this anything but broken. I get it. And you still want it. I want it. Diane's pen clicked. Feels. Noted. Adrian, who hadn't taken his eyes off Evelyn, finally looked down at his hands. There's one last part, he said. Yes, the night. The ballroom. The main event. Victor's spring gala. Exactly. For 5 years, feels. The Hale Capital Gala was Victor's favorite night of the year. Not his biggest party, but the one he threw for the powerful people he wanted in his circle. Feels. Senators on the fence about running again. A couple of ex-ambassadors, the chief of a ratings agency, even a novelist Victor hated politically but loved to parade around. Feels. It was held every single year in a midtown hotel ballroom his grandpa helped build back in 1961. 800 people, black tie, all the champagne you can drink, and Victor on stage rambling about leadership like he had any right, feels. The date was April 11th, 32 days to go. You are going to walk in, Adrian said, with me. The doors will swing open at 9:17 p.m., the exact moment your husband, based on 5 years of my recordings, steps up to the mic, feels. You'll walk the entire length of that room. You'll stop right at the stage. You will not be the first to speak. You wait. He will talk. He'll say something stupid he shouldn't, because guys can always do, and then you say what needs to be said, feels. At that exact moment, you will own that room. Evelyn was processing all of this. Recordings of this party? Yes. You have recordings of Victor's gala. I have recordings of many, many things. Why? Adrian paused for a beat. Then he said, feels. Because 3 years ago, a man I was targeting was on the guest list, and I had to know everyone he talked to, feels. I didn't care about your husband. He was just background noise. But in that background, he said some things on that microphone that I later realized could be very useful. What did he say? Adrian locked eyes with her. You don't want to know. Yes, I do, feels. Evelyn, tell me. Adrian shot a look at Diane, who was still focused on her notepad. He turned back to Evelyn. He made a joke, Adrian said slowly, about his wife. He said, my wife is the reason I come home early. She's also why I don't stay long, feels. The whole room laughed. It's on tape. I will never play a tip for you, ever. I am only telling you this because you asked, and I am trying my best not to lie to you. Feels. The room went dead silent. Evelyn glanced down at her hands. Her wedding ring was already gone. She had taken it off 2 weeks ago and stuffed it in a drawer. Victor never even noticed. Guys like him notice a new shade of lipstick, never a missing ring. Feels. She'd given up being surprised by that ages ago. Okay, continue. Adrian gave a single sharp nod. You wait at the base of the stage. He'll see you. He will see me. For the first 3 seconds, his brain won't process it. Feels. Those 3 seconds belong to you. You have to use them. How? You're going to smile. Evelyn almost choked on a laugh. I will smile. Yes. Feels. Not at him, at the entire room. You will smile like you belong there, which you do, because I had your name quietly added to the guest list this afternoon. My name won't be there. It's not necessary. No one at that door will ever dare ask for my name. Feels. That part is handled. And when it's your turn, you will speak clearly. You will stick to the script. No improvising. Do not raise your voice. The real power will come from how quiet you are. When a room that big goes silent, Evelyn, feels. The softest voice is the loudest one. And I have a feeling you know that already, being a woman who spent 7 years learning to be silent while loud men ignored you. Feels. You will use the very thing he taught you against him. Evelyn stared at him for a long moment. Adrian? Yes. That was a very long sentence. It was. Are you giving me a speech? The corner of his mouth twitched, not quite a smile. Feels. But the closest she'd ever seen on him. I am briefing you, he said. The speech is for the ballroom. Anne clicked her pen, cut in. Evelyn, go home, kiss your husband. Lie to his face for 32 more days. On April 11th, Feels, you will go to an apartment I've booked for you at the Whitmore at 3 p.m. sharp. A woman named Inez will be there. She'll do your hair, your makeup, and put you in a dress we've already selected. Feels. Adrian will meet you in the lobby at 8:40. The car leaves at 8:45. You will be inside that ballroom by 9:17. Understood? Between now and then, you have zero contact with Adrian. You only contact me through our secure channels. Feels. You are done with Delia Vane. You do not go to Boston. You will not do anything that makes anyone think you're a woman preparing for war. You will act like a wife who is slowly starting to believe her marriage is fine. Understood? Feels. If your husband wants another trip to the mountains, you go. I mean it. Go smile. Let him hold your hand. It'll just make it hurt that much more for him later. Feels. The more love he shows you in these 32 days, the worse the whiplash will be when he remembers it all. Do you understand? Evelyn understood. Yes. Good. Adrian stood, buttoning his jacket. He grabbed his papers from the table. Evelyn? Yes. Feels. If you change your mind any time between now and April 11th, my original offer from the gallery still stands. I know. I'm not pushing you. I know. He looked at her for a second, and for the first time she saw a flicker of exhaustion in him. Feels. Like a man who just made a choice he can never take back. Then it was gone. He nodded to Diane and walked out. When the door clicked, Diane took off her glasses and looked straight at Evelyn. Feels. Evelyn, don't. I'm saying it anyway, just once. Please don't. That man does not make offers like that to people. I've known him for 9 years. I have never once heard him say anything like that to another person. So whatever you're doing to him, Feels, you're doing it on purpose. And if you're not, I'm telling you now so you don't realize it 6 months too late by accident. Evelyn said nothing. All right, Diane said. I've said my piece. I won't bring it up again. Good. Go home. Diane? Yes. Feels. Thank you. Don't thank me yet. Diane shot back. The ballroom is 32 days away. And 32 days in one way is a lifetime. In another, it's no time at all. Evelyn lived through them like the last month of a pregnancy. Her body knew the deadline, Feels. But her mind kept forgetting, only to remember with a jolt while washing dishes or picking up dry cleaning. Feels. The worst part was him being so damn nice. Victor, a man she'd had to fight for a complete sentence from for 7 years, suddenly decided after their mountain trip that they were falling in love all over again. He brought home flowers on a random Wednesday. Feels. He booked a table at a restaurant he'd never taken her to. One night, he told her they should seriously talk about having a baby, a subject he'd shot down twice before, always saying it wasn't the right time. But now it was the right time. She just said, Feels. Let's see how spring feels, which wasn't a yes or a no, but Victor definitely heard it as a yes. Feels. So Evelyn could tell part of it was pure guilt. Her husband decided to be a better man because deep down he knew he was a terrible one, and part of it was nerves. His big maritime deal was tanking for some reason, and when Victor got nervous, Feels, he'd scurry home early. He wanted his wife to be warm and comforting because home was the only place he got that, and lately home was feeling icy. But the biggest part? His mistress, Scarlett. Feels. And Evelyn only figured this out later by reading his texts for months, like it was her favorite trashy TV show. The clues were piling up. Around February, Scarlett had stopped calling him baby in every single message. Feels. Scarlett was now asking about the wife all the time. When are you telling her? You promised by Christmas, and it's already March, Victor. He was ignoring some messages for hours. For others, he was typing out those long, Feels. Desperate paragraphs guys send when they're begging a girl not to leave. Basically, Scarlett was finally getting the picture. She was realizing that the marriage she was trying to break up was never going to end, Feels, because rich guys like Victor don't leave their wives. Nope, men like Victor just park their wives in fancy houses and visit their mistresses on a schedule, expecting everyone to just play along. Feels. And Scarlett was about to snap. One night in March, 4 in the morning, with Victor snoring next to her, Evelyn snapped a picture of a golden text. Scarlett wrote, I'm not waiting forever, you said this year. If you don't do it by summer, I'm out. Feels. Victor wrote back, baby, not summer, by June. I prom working on something. Evelyn read that 3 times, I'm working on something. Oh, she knew what he was working on, all right? She'd seen the papers in his office. He was moving money.
Not a lot yet.
Feels. But it was a clear pattern. He was slowly getting ready to bolt. Feels. His master plan. Wait until after the big spring gala, because he wanted to look like a king one last time. Then, late April or early May, he'd sit her down and give her the classic speech. We've grown apart. It's for the best. Blah, blah, blah. Feels. He'd offer her a beach house, some cash, and a chance to spin the story however she wanted. He figured she'd just take it, because to him, she was just a piece of furniture, and furniture doesn't argue. But as Evelyn lay there reading his phone, Feels, she had a very calm thought. You beat me to it, Victor. Feels. You started planning to leave me 2 weeks ago. I started planning to leave you 8 months ago, and I'm going to beat you out the door by 3 weeks. She put his phone back and had the best night's sleep in a year. Then, on April 2nd, Feels, 9 days before the gala, Delia Vane called. Evelyn was in the grocery store, standing there with a bag of lemons when her secret burner phone buzzed. Her friend Diane gave it to her. It had one contact. Evelyn answered. Delia? She called me. Feels. Evelyn stood perfectly still. When? An hour ago. I didn't answer. She left a voicemail. I haven't listened to it. You don't have to. Don't listen. You don't owe me anything more. Feels. I listened to it. Delia? She was crying. Evelyn, I've never heard her cry before. Not since we were little kids. She was saying, I think I did something stupid. I might need a lawyer. I think he's going to throw me to the wolves. She said your husband's name, Feels, but like he was already in her past. Evelyn just walked away from the lemons to a quiet corner of the store by the greeting cards. She stopped and pretended to look at a birthday card with a dog on it. Did she say anything else? She said she was sorry, Feels. Not to our mother, Feels. She said, Mom's going to be so humiliated. She said she was thinking about going to New York to see our mother before it all goes down. She said, don't tell anyone I called. Delia, I'm not telling anyone. I'm telling you. That was our deal. Just 1 sentence, Feels, but I gave you 4. Sorry about that. She was really crying. It's okay. Evelyn, are you going to stop it? Evelyn stared at the birthday card. The dog was wearing a little party hat. Stop what? Whatever's happening. She's going to fall apart, Feels. She's going to hurt herself, or him, or do something nobody can undo. I can hear it. I'm her sister, Feels. I can hear it in your voice too, Delia. I'm not asking you to save her. I'm asking if you get what you're letting happen. Evelyn closed her eyes. She thought of Scarlett Vane at a Christmas party 2 years ago. She thought about all the texts, Feels. She thought about how women like her are supposed to be quiet, just furniture. Then she thought of a $41 million money trail designed to trap the exact person who signed for it, and Scarlett signed everything, Feels. She signed because she thought she was Victor's partner. But she was never his partner. She was just his pen. Delia, listen. I'm listening. Your sister is not a good person. I know. But she's still a person. She did something dumb and she's going to pay, Feels, but she does not deserve to die for it, Feels. So I'm telling you this, and you decide what to do. Got it? If she goes to New York this weekend, sees your mother, and stays at her mom's place from Sunday night through Monday morning, I promise you, Feels. On Monday morning, a woman named Priscilla Okafor will try to find her at her own apartment and fail. Your sister will get 12 extra hours to call a good lawyer before her life implodes. That's all I can do. It's more than anyone else will do for her, Feels. Tell her to go to New York. Today. Delia was quiet for a second. 12 hours? 12 hours is the difference between a panicked public defender and a connected lawyer a friend finds for you. All right? Delia, yes. This is the last thing I'll ever ask, Feels. After this, we're strangers. Feels. You never knew me. If you ever read about what happened, you won't even recognize my name. Do you understand me? I understand. Go. Delia hung up. Evelyn stood there, holding a burner phone with one contact, and just breathed, Feels. She slipped the phone back in her pocket. She bought the lemons. She bought olive oil. She bought cheese, garlic, and a bottle of wine Victor liked. She drove home. She made dinner. Victor got back at 6:30. They ate, Feels. He complained about some guy from his maritime group who mentioned concerning irregularities. Victor laughed it off, but then poured himself a triple scotch, which was not normal, Feels. He disappeared into his study and shut the door. Evelyn heard his voice get loud once, then quiet down. The way a guy's voice drops, when he realizes the person on the phone is more powerful than he is. She did the dishes. She stood at the sink staring out at the dark yard. and thought about Scarlet Vane. In a few days, she'd be getting on a train with no idea her sister's phone call just bought her a top-tier lawyer she'd be meeting late on a Monday night. Feels. It was the only shred of mercy Evelyn had shown in 8 months of plotting this whole thing out. She wasn't sure if she felt good about it, or if she was even supposed to. She dried her hands and went upstairs. Victor was still in his study. Heels. She could hear his voice through the door, sounding small now and tired. She walked right past without stopping. She went into their bedroom and sat on the bed. 9 days. She took her wedding ring out of the nightstand. She stared at it for a long time. The diamond was still gorgeous. It was his grandmother's, and he gave it to her on a terrace in Florence. She'd cried back then, but now it felt like a memory from a movie she barely watched. Feels. She slipped the ring back on her finger. She wanted Victor to see it there for the next 9 days. Every time he looked at her hand at breakfast, on the sofa, in the car. She wanted him to see that ring and feel totally safe, because the safer he felt now, feels, the more explosive the shattering would be when it all ended. She turned off the lamp and laid down in the dark. Victor came to bed 40 minutes later, reeking of scotch, said nothing, and didn't touch her. He was out in less than 5 minutes. Feels. His breathing went steady. The old house creaked, and outside, something small and fast darted across the lawn and vanished into the night. Feels. For a long time, Evelyn just couldn't sleep. She lay there in the dark, the ring on her finger, her husband breathing next to her, her mind stuck on the ballroom 9 days from now. She saw Scarlet Vane crying into a phone. She heard Adrian Volkov saying, Feels. I am trying very hard, Evelyn, to be a person who does not lie to you. And finally, at 4:17 in the morning, she crashed, no dreams. Then at 6:40, Victor's alarm went off. Feels. Evelyn stared at the ceiling she'd seen for 7 years and realized this was one of the last times she would ever see it. Feels. 9 days became 8, 8-5, 5-2. The countdown was on a track she couldn't get off, and she didn't want to. She moved with the cold, feels, perfect calm of a woman on a frozen pond who knows the ice will hold because she's already decided where she's going. In that last week, Victor got strange, not suspicious of her. In 7 years, feels, Victor never suspected Evelyn of anything because that would mean admitting she had her own thoughts. He never gave her that credit. No, he became something way worse for him and way better for her. Feels. He became needy. Suddenly he's home at 5:30, then 6, then 5 again. He's sitting on the kitchen counter watching her chop vegetables, asking little questions he hadn't asked in 3 years. He even brought up their honeymoon. Feels. Remember the olive grove? The old man with the figs? She remembered. She told him she remembered. And she gave him the smile she'd practiced for 8 months in mirrors. The one that was all mouth, no eyes. And Victor, feels, who never actually looked at her eyes, didn't notice a thing. Feels. Wednesday before the gala, he finds her laying out a pale blue dress he knows she hates, one his mother bought her. He looks at it and says, "Is that what you're wearing Friday?" "Yes." "Sweetheart, maybe wear the gold one, the Valentino. You always look incredible in the Valentino." "You don't like this one?" "I love this one. I just like the gold one more. Friday's a big night for me. I want you next to me looking your best, okay? Okay?" "Okay, Victor, I'll wear the gold one."
He kissed the top of her head.
Feels. He told her he loved her and left. She stood there, looking at the blue dress. She picked it up, folded it away, and hung the gold one where Victor would see it in the morning. Of course, she had no intention of wearing the gold one. She'd picked her dress for Friday 11 weeks ago. That dress was waiting at the Whitmore Hotel, and no one in this house would see it until she walked into that ballroom at 9:17. She wasn't angry at him for telling her what to wear. Feels. She was in a strange, detached way, almost grateful. It was one more piece of proof for that future version of herself that might second-guess this. A man, 2 days before she would destroy him, telling her how to decorate his evening. Feels. She took it and tucked it away. Thursday night, Victor came home late, around 11. He was drunk, not stumbling, but that smooth 3 scotches pretending it was 2 kind of drunk. He found her in the library. He stood in the doorway, and Evelyn, Feels, now an expert on his face, saw something new. Fear, just a flicker. Feels. A man looking at his wife for 1 second, asking himself a question he didn't dare finish. She closed her book. "You're home. Yeah, how was dinner?" "Fine, you don't look fine." He came in and sat heavily on the arm of a chair, rubbing his face. "Maritime's a mess," she ate. "They're talking like someone told them things they shouldn't know." "Like what?" "Nothing. Nothing. It's nothing. Just noise." "Victor." "Nothing." "Evelyn, let it go. Okay. He dropped his hands. Heels. He looked at her, and in the lamplight he seemed older than 43. She saw dark shadows under his eyes that weren't there that morning. He hadn't shaved. His mouth was set in that hard line she knew so well, the look of a man refusing to say what he's thinking. Evelyn, yes, are we okay? She just watched him, for what felt like an eternity, watched us muscle jump in his jaw, his fingers gripping the chair. We're fine, Victor. You would tell me, yes. If anything was wrong, you'd tell me. Yes, okay. Feels. His eyes held hers for one more second. He nodded once, more for himself than for her, then turned and walked right out of the library. She heard him go up the stairs. She heard his footsteps pause at their bedroom door, heels, then continued down the hall to his study. The door clicked shut, the lock turned, and Evelyn just sat there. He almost asked. He was so close to asking the real question. She saw it rise in his throat, and she watched him swallow it, heels. Because asking meant accepting her answer might be no, and Victor never believed a woman could say no to him, heels. In 7 years of marriage, it was the closest he ever got to really seeing her. And sitting there, she felt a sick little wave of something that's almost like pity. That feeling when you see the person who was cruel to you, and you realize they're also afraid, heels. And you have to just set that feeling down because you can't carry it with you. She went upstairs, and for the first time ever, she slept in the guest room. She told Marguerite she had a headache. When Victor came down for coffee, feels, he said nothing. He just kissed her cheek and said he'd see her tomorrow night at the Gala. Feels. He left for the office. She watched his car vanish and thought, the next time you see me, your entire life is going to detonate in less than 60 seconds. On Friday morning, Evelyn packed one small bag, a change of clothes, her passport, feels, renewed under her maiden name, a passport Victor never knew about, 2 photos, one of her mom, one of a dog named Polly, and a letter she wrote to herself 8 months ago, the night she read the text still sealed. A toothbrush, that was it. Weeks, feels. She had already moved everything that mattered out of the house, piece by piece, emptying a home around a husband who never even noticed, feels. A silver hairbrush from her grandmother, a small painting of the ocean, a ring from her 16th birthday. It was all waiting in a safety deposit box in Connecticut under the name Evelyn Marsh. The bag was just for her escape. Victor came home for lunch for some reason, and she told him her cover story, heading into the city at 3 for her hair and nails. She said she'd booked a room at the Whitmore because the Gala's hotel was full, and she wanted to get ready without rushing. Feels. She told him she would meet him in the ballroom at 9. He was distracted, phone buzzing in his hand, and just said, fine, sure, yeah, I'll see you there. He kissed her forehead, vanished into his study, and she grabbed her bag and keys. Feels. She walked out of that house on Ashbury Lane and didn't look back. She drove. She didn't cry. She didn't turn on the radio. She drove 5 miles over the speed limit and noticed the trees on the highway finally had leaves. Feels. Spring had arrived while she was completely distracted, and she thought, I have survived an entire winter inside of this plan. Feels. She got to the Whitmore at 2:40. The concierge knew her, so there was no paperwork. A man took her bag to a suite on the 20th floor reserved under Diane's name. When she unlocked the door, a woman was already inside, laying out brushes. Miss Marsh. Yes. They shook hands. Enos was about 50, with dark hair in a bun. No makeup. A face that wasn't warm, but sharp. She'd done Evelyn's hair for Gala 2 years ago. A quiet hire by Diane. Evelyn hadn't thought about it again until now. Feels. Hair first, Ina's orders, then makeup. We've got all the time in the world. Want some tea? Yeah. She drank it. Evelyn sat at the vanity, eyes shut, and just let Ina's work magic on her hair for a solid hour. She said nothing. It felt like a dream, feels, or maybe a nightmare. Her body was just a shell in a chair. Her mind was already in that ballroom, practicing her grand entrance. When Ina finally spun her around after 4, Evelyn stared at a stranger for 3 whole seconds. Her hair was up, feels, but not in that stiff statue-like style Victor demanded. Feels. This was different, softer. Low on her neck, with a few strands left loose around her face, looking almost accidental. The makeup wasn't the usual heavy contouring she was forced to wear. Her eyes looked huge. Her mouth was a deep feels, brownish red she hadn't touched in a decade. Matte. Hostile. She looked like her real self, the way she looked at 22, before she learned how to play the part of a soft, out-of-focus wife at loud dinner parties. She realized with a shock, feels like Evelyn Marsh. Ms. Marsh, yes, the dress. The dress slid out of its bag and Evelyn stood to put it on. Feels. It was black floor length, Wasn't skin tight, but it followed every single one of her curves. It had a high neck, long sleeves, and a back cut so low it almost hit her spine. This was the exact opposite of every gown Victor ever made her wear. Heels. He liked her in bright jewel tones, emerald, sapphire, a tacky red he called Christmas. This dress didn't scream Christmas. This dress wasn't begging for a husband's approval. Heels. This was a dress designed to make an entire room of people stop and stare as a woman walked through a door. As Evelyn stepped into it and Inez zipped it up, she heard a click at her neck and thought, that's it. Heels. That's the sound of the beginning. Inez then fastened a necklace around her throat, a single, thin chain with one dark stone, no earrings, no bracelets. At 5:10, her wedding ring came off. Heels. It went straight into a small black box that Inez held out without saying a word. Evelyn snapped the lid shut without even looking at the ring, handed it back, and Inez tucked it away in her own bag. Diane will return this Monday if you still want it. Heels. I don't. Figured. I'll tell her. Meanwhile, Evelyn's official phone, the one Victor knew about, had been buzzing nonstop in her purse for 40 minutes. She ignored it. At 5:20, she finally picked it up. 6 messages. Where are you? Heels. I'm at the hotel. Heels. Evelyn, I'm at the ballroom. They're doing a sound check. Sweetheart, are you coming? Evelyn, call me. I'm starting to worry. Please pick up. She just stared at the screen. For a second, she felt like an old woman, Heels, reading words on a glowing screen typed by a man she used to love. She put the phone face down on the dresser. She went to the bathroom and washed her hands, getting the cold tea off her skin. She came back, picked up the phone, typed 3 little words, Heels, and hit send. I'm on my way. Then she powered the phone off, shoved it in a drawer, and walked out of the room, leaving it behind. Heels. At 8:40, she took the elevator down to the lobby. The Whitmore's lobby was doing its Friday night thing. Low lights, some piano music, a woman in a green coat laughing at some guy's joke. Evelyn moved through it all like a ghost haunting a museum. Heels. She didn't look left or right. She absolutely did not look for Adrian. Her instructions were clear. Don't look for him. She walked straight to the revolving door and stepped into one of the glass panels. And when she came out on the other side, Heels, Adrian was standing right there. He was in a black tuxedo, no tie. A white shirt open at the collar, just like the first time she saw him. Only this was a brand new, crisp white shirt. Heels. His hair was still a little damp, like a guy an hour after a shower. He had a long coat slung over his arm, not wearing it. He watched her approach, and for a long moment he said nothing, then just, Evelyn. You look, don't. He almost cracked a smile. Heels. I wasn't going to say beautiful. Good. I was going to say ready. She met his gaze. I'm ready. A long black sedan was waiting at the curb. Not a limo, just an anonymous car that blends into the city. A man she didn't recognize opened the back door. Heels. Evelyn got in. Adrian slid in the other side. The door shut, and the city lights smeared past the tinted windows. Heels. For the first 3 minutes, dead silence. At a red light, he turned to study her profile. As the car started moving again, he said quietly, There's one thing I didn't tell you about tonight. About tonight? Spill it. Heels. Scarlet Vane isn't going to be there. Evelyn whipped her head around. Where is she? She flew to New York on Tuesday. Stayed with her mom. Last night, she hired a lawyer. This morning at 9, her lawyer called Priscilla Okafor to set up a meeting. Heels. That meeting is happening as we speak. She's not coming to the gala. By now, your husband has definitely noticed she's ghosting him. Heels. He would have sent her a dozen texts with no reply. By the time we get there, he'll be starting to panic that something is seriously wrong, but he'll still be up at that microphone. Heels. Victor Hale is not the kind of guy who cancels on 800 people just because he has a bad feeling. Evelyn was quiet. Adrian. Yeah. How did you know she'd hire a lawyer last night? He paused for a second. I didn't. It was a calculated guess. Heels. Based on a phone call she made to her sister last week. Evelyn stared at him. You know about Delia. Diane tells me what I need to know, Evelyn. And I needed to know about Delia. I knew what you told her. Heels. I knew that you did something I would have never approved of, and by pure chance, it made our timing absolutely perfect. Heels. So I kept my mouth shut. Oh, why not? He looked out the window. Because you did it. Because you didn't want another woman to die for Victor's mistakes. And I wasn't going to be the guy to ruin that for you. I let it happen. Heels. I told Priscilla to wait one day before visiting Scarlett's apartment. That's how the 12 hours Delia bought her turned into 24. You didn't save her all on your own. It was 50-50. Why? Why delay, Priscilla? Right. Heels. He was quiet for a long moment. Because you're the kind of person who gives a woman 12 hours, she said. And I wanted to be the kind of person who could stand in a room with you. The car turned onto Madison. The hotel was 3 blocks away. Heels. Evelyn, not a good person. Neither am I. I'm doing this because I want to make him hurt. I'm not some hero. I know. You need to know that. I do. Good. She turned back to the window as the car slowed. Heels. They were almost at the hotel. She saw the lineup of black cars, the rich people in furs and tuxes under the awning, the photographers held back by ropes, their camera flashes popping like silent little explosions. It was 8:58. Adrian. Yes. Heels. When we get inside, go on. You don't take my hand. You don't touch my back. You don't even look at me. You walk beside me, half a step behind me on my left. For 7 years, everyone in that room has been trained to see a woman on a man's arm. Heels. I don't want them to see me on anyone's arm. Heels. I want them to see me walk in alone. You are the reason the room goes quiet. I am the reason it stays quiet. He didn't respond for a second. Then he just said, understood. The car stopped. Evelyn opened her own door. She stepped out onto the sidewalk. Heels. The cold April air hitting her skin under the black dress. She could hear the muffled sounds from the ballroom. A voice on a microphone and the low buzz of 800 people trying to be quiet. Adrian came around the car. He didn't touch her. Heels. He walked half a step behind her on her left, exactly as she said, and they started up the red carpet. And the photographers, having no clue who she was, started taking her picture anyway. A woman in a dress like that, next to a man nobody recognized, Heels, was a picture you took first and asked questions later. Heels. They crossed the lobby. A man in a suit with an earpiece, who was clearly waiting for them, fell in step beside them without a word and led them to the ballroom. At the doors he stopped and glanced at Adrian. Adrian gave a slight nod. Heels. Evelyn could hear her husband's voice clearly now, giving his speech. It was the exact same speech he gave every single year. She'd heard it 6 times already. She knew every applause line by heart. She could have mouthed the words right along with him. Heels. And in a year that on paper looked like it was going to break us, we didn't just survive. We built together. That is because Hale Capital is not a company. It's a family. Heels. And a family is what walks through fire for each other. Evelyn took a deep breath. She looked at the giant doors, then back at Adrian. His face gave away nothing. His eyes were locked on hers. He stayed silent, just like she told him. Heels. She turned back to the doors. The man with the earpiece put his hand on the handle. He waited. Inside, Victor was getting to the part that always got a cheap laugh. The story about his grandfather's taxi. Evelyn waited, because she knew the timing perfectly. Heels. And when the wave of laughter rolled through the doors, she gave a single nod. The man pulled the doors wide open, and they swung. Heels. The ballroom doors swing open. Inside, 800 rich people are packed under massive chandeliers. On stage is Victor, mid-law, looking smug as hell. He's got his hand on the podium, the perfect picture of a man who thinks he owns the world. Then Evelyn walks in. One step, then another. A gossip columnist at a back table spots her first. The woman's jaw just drops. She nudges the guy next to her. Her eyes locked on Evelyn like a missile. Heels. The guy looks and stops chewing his food. And that's how the shockwave starts. It rips across the room, killing conversations in an instant. A man near the stage freezes, forgetting to let go of his glass. At table 14, Heels. 2 wives who know the score lock eyes, a silent message passing between them. Oh, it's on. Then someone spots the man walking half a step behind Evelyn. And that person, whoever they were, just stands up. Not dramatically, Heels, but like you do when the ground starts to shake. And up on stage, Victor is still laughing, completely oblivious. Heels. He notices the silence before he notices her. First, that no one is laughing with him. He spots a woman with her hand clamped over her mouth. Still, smiling like a fool, he turns to follow her gaze, and there she is. Evelyn, walking steadily toward him in a black dress, maybe 40 feet away. Her expression is totally blank. Not happy, not mad. She looks like she's just picking up a package from the hotel lobby. Unbothered, unimpressed. Heels. Victor's smile evaporates. Well, it freezes into a half-smile, the look a man gets when his brain crashes. He opens his mouth, then closes it. Then opens it again, but no sound comes out. Then he sees Adrian. It takes him an extra second to place the face, because Adrian isn't on his list of known rivals. Adrian is just some ghost from the wrong side of the city, a name he skimmed in a newspaper once. But Victor Hale didn't build a financial empire by forgetting faces. Heels. He remembers it now, shaking hands lands in some fancy restaurant 3 years ago, when someone quietly hit out Adrian Volkov and gave him a warning. Don't do you don't make an enemy of. Don't do business against him. If he ever shows up in your world, you leave. The name hits him now. She can see it on his face, the name Adrian Volkov landing like a second punch before he's recovered from the first. His knuckles on the podium turn white. Heels. She stops right at the foot of the stage. She says nothing. She just looks up at him and waits. The entire ballroom is dead silent. 800 people, not making a single sound. The silence is so total you can hear the ice melting in a drink. Heels. A woman nearby slowly puts her glass down, and the tiny click of crystal on wood sounds like to speak first. Adrian told her he would. Men like him can't stand the silence, and sure enough, he cracks. Evelyn. It's a whisper, feels, but the microphone makes it boom across the room. Feels. Then louder, he puts on a fake, cheerful voice. Sweetheart, we were worried. Absolute silence. No one even breathes. Evelyn looks up at him, her hands folded, and speaks for the first time. Her voice is quiet, exactly as Adrian coached her to. Feels. Because in a silent room, the quietest voice is the one that makes everyone lean in. Victor. Yes, honey. I need you to do something for me. Anything, sweetheart. She lets that word, sweetheart, just hang in the air. She lets the whole room taste the lie in it. Feels how wrong it sounds right now. Feels. Then she says, still quiet, still clear, I need you to step away from the microphone. Victor lets out a horrible, nervous laugh. The laugh of a man who doesn't know what's happening. Evelyn. Step away, Victor. He doesn't. Honey, this is step away from the microphone podium, and suddenly it looks like the only thing that was holding him upright. Evelyn takes one more step forward. She's at the front now. Every single eye in the ballroom is glued to her. Feels. She can feel Adrian somewhere over her shoulder, a silent force she doesn't turn to look at. This moment isn't about him. Not yet. She looks up at her husband. Everyone in this room, she says, her voice still quiet, is about to learn something. Feels. I'm going to tell them. I'd rather they hear it from me than read it in the news tomorrow. You're welcome to correct any details I get wrong. Victor's mouth opens, but nothing comes out, and Evelyn Hart, the woman he ignored for 7 years, began to speak. Feels. My name, she said, is Evelyn Marsh. Feels. For 7 years I was Evelyn Hart. As of 4:15 this afternoon I am not. Not a sound from the crowd. Victor's face is a mask. Feels. But his hand slides slowly into his pocket, the move he always makes when a business deal is collapsing and he's trying to hide it. The divorce, she said, was filed back in December. It was finalized this week. My attorney is Diane Kessler. Feels. A few people in the crowd flinch. That's a name you don't want to hear. A guy whispers to his wife and she slams her hand on the table, a classy, silent way of telling him to shut up. Feels. I did not want our divorce to be a public spectacle. I wanted it quiet. She looks right at Victor. You'll notice I am not asking for your permission to explain this, Victor. That's a new thing for me. His jaw tightens. Evelyn, we don't have to do this here. Feels. We are doing it here. Sweetheart. Do not call me sweetheart again tonight, Victor. Not in this room. Not ever. That word is over between us. She didn't shout. She just said it, like flicking off a light switch, and the word between them went dark. Feels. Victor just stood there, speechless. Feels. Second, Evelyn said, earlier today, the Financial Regulatory Commission got a package of documents about Hale Capital Partners. These papers detail about $41 million in fraud tied to a bunch of shell companies. Feels. They've also been talking to a former employee of yours who decided to cooperate. I think you know which one. For the first time, Victor's mask shatters. His face goes slack. His jaw drops, and a muscle under his eye twitches before he snaps it shut. Feels. His hand shoots back to the podium. He needs something to hold on to. Feels. You are going to be questioned, Evelyn said, possibly tomorrow. I don't know when. But I know what they'll ask. For everyone in this room doing business with him, know this. Feels. Any contract you have with Hale Capital is now a contract with a man about to spend years explaining where $41 million disappeared to. Some of you have already started planning the calls you'll make tonight to cut him loose. I'm not judging. Feels. A chair scrapes in the back. Someone is leaving. Nobody turns to look. Feels. Third, she said. Evelyn, stop, he pleaded. Third, the house on Ashbury Lane was bought through a trust. Under our divorce, that trust is dissolved. The house is mine. I will be selling it. I don't want it. Feels. If anyone here is looking for a 22-room house with great lighting, my lawyer will take calls on Monday. A short, shocked laugh bursts out from someone in the crowd. It was silenced immediately, but it broke the tension. Feels. The room was no longer a single unit. They were 800 people who were once Victor's guests and were now her audience. Feels. And then she drops the bomb. The apartment, the cars, the art, and his entire stake in Hale Capital Partners. It's all his. She makes it crystal clear for the reporters, because they'll spin it otherwise. She's not taking his business. Feels. His business is leaving him, all thanks to choices he made, choices she had nothing to do with. She looks right at him, and for the first time in 7 years, he has a look on his face she's never seen. It's not anger, it's not sadness. Feels. It's the look of a man who just realized the ground he's been standing on his whole life wasn't solid ground. It was a rug. Feels. And someone just yanked it. He says nothing. He can't. Then she goes in for the kill. This last part is just for you, Victor. For 7 years, we lived under the same roof, and you never even saw me. You didn't know I take my coffee black. Feels. You didn't know my maiden name was Marsh. You didn't know I stopped wearing perfume in January, or that I'd cracked your safe 47 times since August. You knew none of it, because you decided I was just another pretty thing you owned. Feels. So you stopped looking. That was your big mistake. Feels. It wasn't the worst thing you ever did, but it was the start of everything. It's why you're standing there looking like a fool right now. A man who actually pays attention to his wife sees what she's turning into. Feels. A man who doesn't find out in front of 800 people that she became someone else a long, long time ago. Her voice is ice. I'm not mad, Victor. I was, for maybe 45 minutes on a Tuesday back in October. After that, I became something else. Feels. And I've been busy these last few months. I'm not angry. I feel absolutely nothing for you at all. Feels. That's what I want you to remember. Not anger. Just nothing. You are nothing to me. You haven't been for a long time. I just figured you deserved to hear it out loud, in a voice you can't shut up. She holds his gaze for a second more, then whispers, "Goodbye, Victor." She turns and walks right back down the center of that ballroom, past the shocked faces, past the columnist with his jaw on the floor, past those frozen waiters, the white tablecloths, and the ghosts of 100 parties. Feels. Adrian Volkov walks just behind her, never touching her, a silent shadow. Everyone there would later swear he never said a single word. At the doors, Evelyn stops but doesn't turn. She speaks to the air behind. The catering's paid for until 11.
Please, enjoy the party. It's a lovely room. And then she's gone.
The doors shut, and for 3 solid seconds, the ballroom is dead, silent. The kind of silence where nobody has a clue what to do. Then one woman at a back table stands up, grabs her purse, and bolts. Feels. Then a guy near the front. Then 3 more. In less than 4 minutes, the whole place is empty and out, the way a party dies after something happens that no one can explain. Victor Hale just stands at the podium, watching it all go down. He doesn't move. Feels. A waiter said he stood there for almost 15 minutes, his hand flat on the wood, watching the room clear out, watching his own staff refuse to meet his eyes, watching the lights come up on a kingdom that an hour ago was all his. Feels. When he finally gets off the stage, he walks right past the bar and the coat check. Feels. He walks out a side door onto Madison Avenue around 10 o'clock on a Friday night. He's just standing there on the sidewalk in a tux with no coat, his phone in his pocket. He doesn't pull it out. There's literally no one left for him to call. Feels. Evelyn doesn't go back to her hotel. The car takes her and Adrian downtown, stopping in front of a brownstone she's never seen. Adrian gets out and opens her door. No helping hand. She told him not to. He leads her up 3 stone steps, unlocks a black door. Feels. The entry is warm. Feels. A small table holds a lamp and a single vase. The house smells a little like cedar and lemon. It doesn't smell like a bachelor pad or like a woman lives there. It smells clean, like it was just aired out. She stands there in her black dress, feeling awkward. Feels. "This is mine," he says. "I have 3 others. I chose this one because it's the quietest. I thought you'd want quiet." "Yes." "There's a room upstairs, second door on the left. It's just us in the house. There's food in the kitchen if you're hungry. Tea." Feels. "Or bottle of something very old if you prefer." Feels. "Or nothing at all. You don't have to eat or talk. I'll be in the back room on this floor as long as you're up. If you need me, you know where to find me. If not, I'll see you in the morning." Evelyn waits a beat, then asks Adrian, "Yes." "Why here? Why not a hotel?" Feels. He just looks at her. "Because," he says, "when a woman does what you just did, she shouldn't end the night in a hotel with a mint on her pillow. Tonight is not a night for a mint. I've learned that after certain evenings, a person needs a real house." Feels. "Not just some room a stranger cleaned." Feels. "This is a house. It's been standing for 110 years. It has survived far worse nights than this one. I thought you might find that comforting. Evelyn just stares at him. Adrian? Yes. I am not going to sleep with you tonight. Heels. His face almost flinches, like he's offended. Almost, but he shuts it down fast. Evelyn, I didn't ask you to. I know. I brought you to a house with a guest room because I thought you'd want one. I didn't bring you here expecting you to get in my bed. Heels. If you wanted the Whitmore, I would have taken you there. Heels. If you want to go to the Whitmore right now, I'll take you. The car is still waiting. She looks at him for a long moment. I'm sorry. Don't be. I'm sorry anyway. Evelyn. It's 1:20 in the morning. Go upstairs. There's a robe on the door. Heels. Toothpaste in the drawer. I had someone put a kettle in the room, thinking you might want some tea by yourself. That's as far as my plan went. I haven't planned anything else. Go upstairs. She almost laughs, but it dies in her throat. She goes. Heels. The room is simple. A bed, a lamp, a window, a kettle, tea, and the robe, just like he said. Heels. She stands in the middle of the room in her revenge dress for a minute, before slowly taking it off and hanging it up. She puts on the robe and sits on the bed. She doesn't cry. She thought she would. The body has its own agenda. She'd planned on crying in the car, but didn't. Planned on crying on the stairs, but nothing. She just sits there in a robe that smells like cedar, waiting for tears that never show up. Instead, she gets hungry. It's a total surprise. Heels. She hadn't eaten since lunch and wasn't hungry then. But now she's starving, like the clean hunger you get after a long run. A purely physical need, totally separate from the chaos in her head. She heads downstairs. Adrian is in the kitchen. Heels. Ripping chunks of bread from a loaf with his bare hands. Something she'd never pictured him doing. Next to him is a plate of cheese, olives, tomatoes. He looks up when she walks in, totally unsurprised. I thought you might come down. I'm hungry. I know. Heels. How? I've had nights like this, not exactly the same. Heels. Close enough. I know what a body needs at 1:30 in the morning after it's been carrying a secret for 8 months. He pushes the plate towards her. She stands right there at the counter and eats bread and cheese. She eats a tomato, then an olive. Heels. He pours her a glass of water, and she downs it. He pours another. She drinks that too. They don't talk. The kitchen is quiet, with a clock ticking on the wall and the fridge humming. A car's headlights sweep across the room for a second, and then vanish. Heels. Adrian, I want to ask you something. Heels. Yes, and I need you to be completely honest. All right. Why did you really delay Priscilla for that extra day? Not the excuse you gave me in the car. He leans against the counter, arms crossed. He looks at the floor for a second, heels, like he's trying to find the right words for the first time. Because he says, I grew up in a town where a woman named Vera lived 3 doors down from my mother. Vera had a husband who beat her. Everybody knew about it. Nobody did a thing. Heels. One winter he beat her so bad the doctors said she'd never walk again. But she did. Heels. It took 3 years, and she walked with a cane for the rest of her life. My mother would bring her bread, just bread, twice a week. When I was 9, I asked my mom why she didn't do more. She said, Adrian, I'm not a strong woman. I can do bread, but bread twice a week is something Vera knows she can count on. And that is not nothing. He paused. Vera died when I was 19. Her husband 4 years later. I was already here by then. I didn't go back for the funeral, but I never forgot about that bread. Twice a week. Feels. My mother wasn't a hero who could save anyone. She could only bring bread, but the bread mattered. He looked up. Scarlet Vane isn't some innocent old lady, he said. She's a woman who made bad choices with a married man and helped him move dirty money. Feels. I'm not getting sentimental about her, but when you told Delia to send her to New York, you gave that woman bread. A 12-hour head start. It cost you nothing, and it probably saved her life. At the very least, Heels, it saved her from a terrible lawyer at 5 in the morning. I stalled Priscilla because you gave her that bread. And for once I wanted to be the kind of man who lets a little bread do its work. He stopped talking. Evelyn said nothing. Heels. Adrian, yes, you are a very strange man. I know. You move money that isn't yours. You know people who just disappear. You have 3 houses. And you just told me a story about your mother and bread. Yes, all those things are true at once. They are. Heels. I don't understand you. You don't have to. I'd like to. He just looked at her. Then we have time, he said. I'm not going anywhere. The business is done. You are free. And for the first time in 9 years, I'm not finishing a fight. Heels. If you want to understand me, take all the time you need. She almost said something, but she didn't. Heels. She popped the last olive into her mouth, chewed it slowly. Adrian, yes. Thank you for the bread. A small smile touched his lips. You're welcome, Miss Marsh. Heels. Fast forward 7 months. Shika Wong and Hale Capital Partners were just a name on dead letterhead. The investigation Priscilla Okafor started that morning had blown up into a second, then a third. Victor was indicted in June on 17 counts. Deals. He took a plea deal in August. His lawyer was blunt. A trial costs 10 years of your life. A plea costs 4 years and your name. He chose the 4 years. And Scarlett Vane? She had cooperated. She had testified. Deals. In the end, she dodged prison, just like Diane said she would. She ditched the city, moved back to her hometown, and got a bookkeeping job where nobody knew her past. That summer, her sister Delia finally took her call, Deals, and they actually talked for 19 minutes. Delia wrote to Evelyn in October. The letter said, she doesn't know it was me. She thinks we saved her because we're family. Just let her. It's making her a kinder person, Deals. But Evelyn never wrote back. She had told Delia that night that after this they were done. Deals. She wasn't the kind of woman who broke a promise. She kept that letter, tucking it away in a desk drawer in the brownstone she eventually called home. She didn't move in right away. For 7 weeks, she lived in the guest room. Then in early June, Deals. She asked Adrian if there was a room that wasn't for guests but also wasn't his. He said there was an unused study. That afternoon, she said she wanted it to be hers. Without looking up from his paper, he just said, "The desk by the window has a good chair, Deals. My son chose it, so it's better than it looks." And that was that. Eventually, she married him. It was a tiny thing. A city clerk on a Thursday. Diane was a witness. Marguerite came in from the country, and Marguerite cried. Deals. She was the only one in the room who did. Evelyn sat her down in the chair right next to Adrian's. Afterwards, they took Marguerite to a lunch place she'd dreamed about for 30 years but had never been to. Evelyn paid the bill. Deals. It wasn't some huge wedding. No designer dress. No 800 people in a ballroom. Evelyn already did the white dress and ballroom thing at 24. She didn't need a repeat. She thought of Victor sometimes over the next few years, but not a lot. Deals. And less as time went on. Then in his second year, a letter arrived from federal prison. Deals. Diane intercepted it, like she always did. She called Evelyn from the office. "He sent a letter. You want me to read it to you?" Evelyn thought about it for a second, then said, "No, burn it." Diane replied, "All right." Then she added, "For the record, Deals. If you'd asked me to read it, I would have. I wouldn't have burned it." Evelyn's voice was quiet. "I know. So that's why I'm telling you to burn it, please." And Diane burned it. That was the last time she really thought about Victor for months. And when she did, Deals, it wasn't with hate. It was with this weird, cold pity of someone who's climbed a huge mountain and can finally see the place they left behind with perfect clarity. Deals. She realized he was just a small man who'd been told his whole life he was a giant. And the massive gap between that story and the truth was the fuel for everything he did. In the end, all he needed was everyone around him to believe the myth. Deals. The moment one person stopped, the whole story collapsed. That break shattered all his other relationships because they were all built on that same fragile lie. She didn't feel sorry for him. Mostly, she just felt a distant curiosity. Did he read now? Deals. Did he have a friend? Did he ever wonder how she took her coffee, only to realize he never knew? She suspected he didn't. Deals. She imagined he'd told his story of his downfall 100 times by now. And in every version, he was still the tragic hero, and she was just a piece of furniture. She'd made peace with being furniture in his story a long time ago. Deals. It wasn't her job to be a character in his drama anymore. Her job was to be the star in her own. But if anyone had asked her later, Evelyn would have said this. Revenge isn't what you think. It's not some blazing fire. It isn't a blood-curdling scream. Deals. It's not a woman in a red dress holding a knife. Those are just the movie posters we use because they're easier than the truth. Deals. The truth is, real revenge is a long, quiet, patient game. And by the time you get to the end, you're not the same person who started. The woman leaving that ballroom is not the woman who walked into that study with a phone. Deals. The woman who walks out has spent 8 months becoming someone new. And at the end, the husband isn't the point. The journey is the point. She would have said the worst thing Victor ever did wasn't the affair. Anyone can have an affair, they're cheap. No, Deals. The worst thing was the 7 years before it. The years he came home every night, ate dinner with her, and slept next to her, and still built his life in a way that left her completely and utterly unseen. Deals. The affair was just a symptom. Being unseen, that was the sickness. A woman can survive being cheated on. But a woman can't really survive being in a room with a man for 7 years and being totally invisible. That kind of invisibility is a slow poison, feels. By the time you realize what's happening, you're already half dead. The hard part wasn't destroying him. The hard part was climbing back out of that hole yourself. She would have told you if you asked, feels, that her proudest moment that year wasn't the ballroom. The ballroom was easy. It was just a 40-minute performance she had practiced for 8 months, feels. No, the thing she was proudest of happened on a Tuesday afternoon the next spring, in the greenhouse behind the brownstone. Marguerite was visiting, and she asked Evelyn how she took her coffee. Evelyn said, with milk and a little sugar, feels, and Marguerite replied, I know, I remember. And right there in that greenhouse, Evelyn started to cry. Not a big cry, just a quiet one. Marguerite just let her, putting a hand on her shoulder and saying nothing, feels. She was the kind of woman who knew that some tears should never be interrupted with words. That, Evelyn would have said, was the moment she knew it had all worked. Not the ballroom, the greenhouse, feels. A woman crying because someone remembered her coffee. You can't plan a moment like that. You can only earn it, years later after you tear down your life and rebuild it, and you finally know the new foundation is solid. In the end, feels, she lived a long and mostly quiet life. She never got famous. The ballroom story was news for about 3 weeks before it faded away. For the next decade, some people in the city still remembered. At parties, they'd whisper, that's her, feels, the one in the black dress. When she walked into a restaurant, Evelyn just ignored them. She was done making entrances. She didn't need to anymore, feels. See, for 12 years, she'd been running a secret foundation that paid the legal bills for women who needed to escape their husbands but were broke. Diane was on the board. They never put up a single ad. It all ran on a whispered network, feels. From one woman to another, through hairdressers, doctors, and nurses in the ER. Over 12 years, they bought freedom for 411 women. 2 of them wrote books. 1 of them became a state senator. Most just moved on to quieter lives, feels, in smaller houses with way better coffee. And Evelyn's face was never seen in a single photo because she told Diane from day one, my name goes on nothing, feels. Not the letterhead, the website, or the thank you notes. Put Diane's name on it. Use anyone's name, not mine. I had my night in the ballroom. That was enough. Adrian got old right there beside her. Slowly, on a day she could never quite name, feels, he just changed. He stopped being the man in the tuxedo at the ballroom door and became a guy with skilled hands who baked amazing bread, just because he decided to learn in his 60s and turned out to be a natural. At 62, feels, he basically retired from his old life. 3 houses became 1. The man at the window vanished. He died at 77 in that same brownstone on a winter afternoon with his head in her lap and a book lying open on the couch next to them. Feels. You know, she stayed with him until the light left the room and then some. And no, she never remarried. She'd lived the 2 great chapters of her life. She was a man's furniture and in the other, a man's partner. Sometime in her 60s, feels, she decided she didn't need a third. Who else would ever know exactly how she took her coffee anyway? She lived for 11 years without him, mostly in that brownstone. She read, feels. She walked in the park every morning until her knees told her it was time to quit. So she took shorter walks. Wednesdays meant lunch with Diane, who also never remarried, and who in her 80s, feels, was the sharpest woman Evelyn had ever met. And that was saying something, feels. Once a year, she spoke at a small foundation dinner, introduced under a fake name. It was a private joke that Diane got a huge kick out of, so Evelyn let her have it. She died on a Tuesday in October in her own bed, and in her last clear hour, feels, she thought that was a kind of perfect private poetry. Because it was on a Tuesday in October, a lifetime ago, that a phone buzzed 3 times on a marble table, and she had crossed a rug in her stocking feet to answer it, feels. That was the last thing Evelyn Marsh thought of before she died. Not the ballroom, not the applause, not 800 faces. Just the rug, the stockings, the cool weight of the phone in her hand. That one, feels. Tiny moment when a woman who had been furniture lifted a piece of glass to her ear and decided, without even knowing it, that she was going to become something else. And she had. Feels, and damn right she had.